She spent the night with a billionaire by mistake and disappeared. Now he'll do anything to find her. Hello? Let's start another beautiful story. Welcome to my channel. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Let's go. The gleaming glass doors of the Ritz-Carlton Boston swung open as Amelia Carter stumbled through, dragging her wheeled suitcase behind her. The marble lobby sparkled under crystal chandeliers, a stark contrast to the exhaustion clouding her vision. After 14 hours of back-to-back client meetings, all she wanted was to collapse into bed. "Welcome to the Ritz-Carlton," the receptionist greeted with practiced warmth. "Checking in." Amelia managed a tired smile. "Yes, reservation for Carter." She fumbled with her phone, pulling up the confirmation email. The New England Interior Design Conference started bright and early tomorrow, and she needed every minute of sleep she could get. The receptionist's fingers flew across the keyboard. "Here we are, room 1542. She slid a key card across the polished counter. "Elevators are to your right. Enjoy your stay, Ms. Carter." The elevator ride was a blur. Amelia's mind drifted to tomorrow's presentation. At 27, she was one of the youngest featured speakers at the conference. This could be her big break, a chance to establish herself independently in the cutthroat world of luxury interior design. The hallway stretched endlessly before her. 1538, 1540, 1542. Amelia swiped the card, relief washing over her as the lock clicked green. She pushed open the heavy door, wheeling her suitcase inside. The room was larger than she expected, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Boston Common. A king-sized bed dominated the space, its crisp white linens beckoning. Without bothering to change or even remove her shoes, Amelia collapsed onto the mattress. Sleep claimed her instantly. Landon Sinclair's private jet touched down at Logan International just before midnight. He loosened his tie, exhausted from a day of contentious board meetings in New York. The latest acquisition wasn't going as smoothly as planned, and the shareholders were getting restless. His driver navigated through Boston's empty streets as Landon scrolled through emails on his phone. At 34, he'd built Sinclair Tech from a startup into a multi-billion-dollar empire. But success came with a price. Endless demands, constant scrutiny, and a gnawing loneliness he refused to acknowledge. The Ritz-Carlton's night manager personally escorted him to his suite. As CEO of one of the country's largest tech companies, Landon valued his privacy. Few people knew he kept a permanent residence in the hotel's executive floor. "Will you need anything else this evening, Mr. Sinclair?" "No, thank you, James." Landon waited until the manager's footsteps faded before inserting his keycard. The lock blinked green. He stepped inside, loosening his tie further. The room was dark, except for city lights filtering through the windows. Something felt different. The air held an unfamiliar scent, a light floral perfume that definitely wasn't there this morning. Landon reached for the light switch. His breath caught. There was someone in his bed. A woman lay curled on top of the covers, dark hair spilling across his pillow. Her chest rose and fell with deep, peaceful breaths. A wheeled suitcase stood by the door. Definitely not his. Landon's first instinct was to call security, but something stopped him. Maybe it was the sheer absurdity of the situation, or the way she looked so perfectly at home in his space. He approached cautiously, studying her face in the dim light. She was beautiful, young, probably mid-20s, with delicate features and full lips slightly parted in sleep. Her business attire was wrinkled from her impromptu nap, but the quality was obvious. This wasn't some random squatter. "Excuse me," he said quietly, not wanting to startle her. She stirred slightly, but didn't wake. "Miss?" He touched her shoulder gently. Her eyes flew open. For a moment, they just stared at each other, her brown eyes wide with confusion, meeting his steel-grey gaze. Then she screamed. Amelia scrambled backward, nearly falling off the bed. "Who are you? What are you doing in my room?" "Your room?" Landon raised an eyebrow. "This is my suite. I think there's been a mistake." "What? No, this is 1542. The front desk gave me the key." She grabbed her phone, checking the time. "Oh God, how long was I asleep? It's just after midnight." Landon couldn't help but notice the way her cheeks flushed pink with embarrassment. "And this is suite 1642. You're on the wrong floor." "Oh no, oh no, no, no." Amelia jumped up, smoothing her wrinkled clothes. "I'm so sorry, this is mortifying. I must have been more tired than I thought." She rushed to grab her suitcase. I should go." "Wait." The word escaped before Landon could stop it. She paused, hand on the door handle. "At least let me call down to sort out your actual room." Amelia turned back slowly. Something electric crackled in the air between them. "That's very kind of you, but I've already imposed enough." "Please," Landon gestured to the sitting area. "It's no imposition. I'm Landon, by the way." She hesitated, then released the handle. "Amelia." He picked up the room phone while she perched nervously on the edge of an armchair. The front desk was apologetic about the mix-up, promising to send up the correct key immediately. "They'll be here in a few minutes," Landon said, hanging up. "Can I offer you a drink while we wait? Water? Wine?" "Water would be nice." Amelia's voice was soft but carried a musical quality that drew him in. He poured 2 glasses from the crystal carafe, using the moment to study her reflection in the window. She was even lovelier awake, with an underlying strength in her posture despite her obvious embarrassment. "So," he said, handing her a glass, "what brings you to Boston?" "A design conference. I'm speaking tomorrow morning." She took a sip. "Well, technically this morning." "Interior design," she nodded. "How did you know?" "Lucky guess. You have an eye for aesthetics." He gestured to her carefully coordinated outfit, even in its rumpled state. A knock at the door interrupted whatever she was about to say. The night manager stood outside with a new key card. "Your actual room is ready, Ms. Carter. Again, we sincerely apologize for the confusion." Amelia stood, gathering her belongings. "Thank you for being so understanding about all this," she said to Landon. "It was my pleasure." He held the door for her. "Good luck with your presentation." She stepped into the hallway, then paused. Their eyes met again, and that same electric current surged between them. For a moment, it seemed like she might say something more. Instead, she smiled softly and walked away. Landon closed the door, but found himself unable to move away from it. The scent of her perfume lingered in the air, teasing him with what might have been. He hadn't felt this kind of instant connection with anyone in years, maybe ever. On the other side of the door, Amelia leaned against the wall, heart racing. The memory of his grey eyes and quiet intensity made her shiver. She forced herself to walk to the elevator, knowing she should be grateful for such an understanding response to her mistake. But as she lay in her actual room an hour later, sleep eluded her. All she could think about was the mysterious Landon, and how the biggest mistake of her professional life somehow felt like the beginning of something extraordinary. Neither of them could have known how that simple mix-up would change everything. Sleep never came for Amelia that night. She tossed and turned, replaying every moment of her encounter with Landon. His steel-grey eyes haunted her thoughts, along with the inexplicable pull she'd felt toward him. By 4 a.m., she found herself pacing the correctly assigned hotel room, her presentation notes forgotten on the desk. "This is ridiculous," she muttered, pressing her forehead against the cool window glass. Below, Boston's streets were quiet, a few early morning delivery trucks making their rounds. "He's probably just another entitled rich guy with a permanent suite at the Ritz." But she couldn't shake the feeling that there was something different about him, the gentleness in his voice when he'd woken her, the way he'd made sure she got to her proper room. No demands, no advantages taken, just quiet consideration. Amelia's phone buzzed with a text from her sister Charlotte. "Knock them dead today. Can't wait to hear how the presentation goes." The presentation. Right. In less than 4 hours, she'd be standing in front of the most influential names in New England's design world. This was her chance to break free from the shadow of her former employer, Regina Walsh, whose high-end design firm had nearly crushed Amelia's spirit with impossible demands and toxic management. She should be rehearsing her talking points, not daydreaming about a stranger. With determination, Amelia showered and began her morning routine. The designer suit she'd carefully packed hung pristine in the closet, a significant investment for her fledgling independent business. As she applied her makeup, she tried to focus on the day ahead, but her mind kept drifting back to sweet 1642. Landon sat in his office adjacent to the suite, laptop open but untouched. Dawn was breaking over the city, painting the sky in strokes of pink and gold. He hadn't slept either. Instead, he'd spent hours researching the design conference. The schedule listed an A. Carter presenting on sustainable luxury design at 9 a.m. He'd already instructed his assistant to clear his morning meetings. "You're being irrational," he told himself, running a hand through his disheveled dark hair. Women had been throwing themselves at him since Sinclair Tech went public 5 years ago. Gold diggers, social climbers, ambitious entrepreneurs. He'd learned to keep them all at arm's length. But Amelia was different. The genuine embarrassment. In her eyes, the lack of recognition when she looked at him. It was refreshing. For one brief moment, he'd just been a man helping a woman with a mix-up, not the billionaire CEO whose face regularly appeared in tech magazines. His phone chimed. Another crisis with the acquisition needed his attention. Landon ignored it, standing to look out over the city. Somewhere in this hotel, Amelia was preparing for her presentation. He could easily find her, arrange another accidental meeting. The thought was tempting. Too tempting. The conference ballroom was already full when Amelia arrived at 8:30. She checked her presentation files one last time, trying to calm her nerves. The morning's first speaker was finishing up, discussing trends in commercial space design. Amelia Carter. She turned to find a conference organizer holding a clipboard. "Yes? There's been a slight change. We'd like you to present in the main hall instead of breakout room C. Your topic's gotten a lot of pre-registration interest." Amelia's heart skipped. The main hall held 3 times as many people. "Oh, yes, of course. Thank you." As she followed the organizer to prepare for the room change, she didn't notice the distinguished-looking man slipping into the back of the hall. Landon chose a seat partially hidden by a column, not wanting to disturb her concentration. The next 45 minutes transformed Amelia. Gone was the embarrassed woman from last night. In her place stood a confident professional, commanding the attention of hundreds as she outlined her vision for sustainable luxury design. Her passion shone through every word, every gesture. Landon was transfixed. She moved across the stage, with natural grace, fielding questions with intelligence and wit. When she showed examples of her work, he could see why she'd been given the larger venue. Her designs were innovative, blending opulence with environmental consciousness in ways he'd never considered. As the audience applauded at the end, Landon made a decision. He pulled out his phone, prepared to have his assistant arrange a meeting. They could discuss incorporating her ideas into Sinclair Tech's new headquarters. A legitimate business proposition, the perfect excuse to see her again. But when he looked up, Amelia was gone. The high of a successful presentation carried Amelia through packing her bags. She'd received several promising business cards from potential clients, enough to potentially secure her independence for good. She should have been elated. Instead, Her thoughts kept drifting upstairs to suite 1642. Making her way to the hotel's business center, Amelia sat at one of the computers. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard as she debated with herself. Finally, she began typing, "Dear Landon, thank you again for your kindness last night. I'm sorry for the intrusion." She paused, then deleted the words. Started again. "I can't stop thinking about delete. Maybe we could delete." Finally, she wrote 5 simple words. This was a mistake. Forget me. 10 minutes later, an envelope bearing his room number was on its way up with a bellhop. By the time it reached his door, Amelia was already in a taxi headed to the airport, her heart pounding with equal parts regret and relief. She was doing the right thing. Her career was finally taking off. The last thing she needed was a complicated entanglement with someone who probably saw her as nothing more than an amusing diversion. Better to leave it as a strange, lovely memory, a what-if to wonder about late at night. Landon stared at the note, reading those 5 words over and over. The paper was hotel stationery, her handwriting elegant but rushed. He could almost smell her perfume on it. "Sir," his assistant's voice came through the phone, "the board is waiting for your decision on the Morgan acquisition." "Cancel it," he said abruptly. "I'm sorry?" "The acquisition. Cancel it, and get me everything you can find on Amelia Carter, interior designer, presumably based in Boston or the surrounding area." "Sir, the shareholders will understand when they see my new vision for the company." He looked out over the city again, clutching her note. "We're going to revolutionize sustainable corporate architecture, starting with our new headquarters, and I know exactly who's going to help us do it." The note had told him to forget her, but Landon Sinclair hadn't built an empire by giving up easily. He'd find her again, not because of the electricity between them, not because of the way she'd occupied his thoughts all night, but because she was exactly what his company needed. At least, that's what he told himself as he began to plan. Landon's normally pristine office had become a maze of documents and digital screens. Each display showed a different facet of Amelia Carter's life. Design portfolios, business registrations, social media profiles. "Mr. Sinclair?" Victoria Chen, his assistant, appeared in the doorway. "The report on Ms. Carter. What did you find?" "She's based in Providence, not Boston. Started her own firm 6 months ago after leaving Walsh Interiors. Small but growing client list, specializing in sustainable luxury renovations." Landon approached the window, studying the Boston skyline. "And the board?" Nervous about the headquarters project's sudden change in direction, Victoria hesitated. "Sir, are you sure about this? Show them the sustainability projections again." He didn't mention the note in his desk drawer. This was a mistake. Forget me. In her tiny Providence office, Amelia was sorting color swatches when her sister Charlotte burst in, still wearing hospital scrubs. "You're not going to believe who called," Charlotte said. "Sinclair Tech. They want you for their new headquarters project." Amelia's hands froze. "What did you tell them?" "That I'd pass along the message." Charlotte studied her sister's face. "Why do you look terrified?" "I'm not ready for a project that size." "Bullshit. This is your chance to prove yourself after. Regina tried to destroy your career." Charlotte grabbed her sister's hands. "At least take the meeting." After Charlotte left, Amelia pulled up the article she'd been hiding from herself. "CEO Landon Sinclair announces revolutionary green initiative for new headquarters." The photo showed him as she remembered. Powerful frame, intense grey eyes, commanding presence. He was looking for her. She knew it wasn't a coincidence. "Sir?" Victoria's voice crackled through the intercom. "We found her office address, and she just received our message about the project." Landon straightened. "Book the conference room for tomorrow. Have the proposals ready." "She hasn't agreed yet." "She will." His phone buzzed with a text from his brother, Robert. Shareholders. Breathing down my neck about the headquarters delay. Please tell me you haven't lost your mind. Landon replied simply. Trust me. His computer chimed. New email from Amelia Carter. Sinclair Tech Headquarters Project. Meeting request. The message was professional, detached, accepting the initial consultation. But the last line made him smile. While I appreciate the interest in my work, Mr. Sinclair, I want to be clear that this would be strictly a professional relationship. We'll see about that, he murmured. In her dark office, Amelia stared at her sent email, wondering if she'd just made the biggest mistake of her life, or her first step towards something extraordinary. The truth she was hiding from him weighed heavily on her mind, but there was no turning back now. The game had begun. Amelia arrived at Sinclair Tech's Boston headquarters 30 minutes early, her portfolio tucked under her arm. The towering glass building reflected the morning sun, its current architecture representing everything her sustainable design philosophy opposed. She took a deep breath, straightened her navy blazer, and pushed through the revolving doors. Ms. Carter, a sleek Asian woman in her 30s, approached. I'm Victoria Chen, Mr. Sinclair's assistant. Thank you for coming. So this is the voice from the phone calls, Amelia thought. She followed Victoria to the security desk, hyper-aware of her racing pulse. I appreciate the invitation, though I'm still not sure I'm the right fit for a project this size. Victoria's expression revealed nothing as she handed over a visitor's badge. Mr. Sinclair seems to think otherwise. The elevator ride to the executive floor was silent. Amelia used the time to steel herself. She'd spent hours preparing for this meeting, reviewing corporate headquarters trends, sustainability statistics, even Sinclair Tech's quarterly reports. She would be professional, detached, focused only on the project. The elevator doors opened to a minimalist reception area. Through glass walls, Amelia could see a large conference room where several people were already gathered. Her step faltered when she spotted him. Landon stood at the head of the table, commanding attention without effort. His charcoal suit was perfectly tailored, dark hair slightly tousled, as if he'd been running his fingers through it. When he looked up and their eyes met, electricity crackled through the air. Ms. Carter. He strode to meet her, extending his hand. Welcome to Sinclair Tech. His touch sent shockwaves through her system. Mr. Sinclair, thank you for considering my firm. If he was affected by their contact, he didn't show it. Please meet the team. Robert Sinclair, our CFO, and my brother. Diana Lewis, Head of Operations. James Warren, Sustainability Director. Amelia shook hands with each, noting how Robert shared Landon's height, but little else. Where Landon radiated intensity, Robert seemed more easygoing, his smile genuine. Shall we begin? Landon gestured to an empty chair right next to his. Amelia took her seat, spreading out her portfolio. She could do this. She would do this. As you know, Landon began, we're planning a complete overhaul of our corporate presence. The new headquarters will set industry standards for sustainable architecture while honoring Boston's historical character. An ambitious goal, Amelia said, proud of how steady her voice sounded. Have you selected a location? We're in final negotiations for the old Mason building in Back Bay. Diana pulled up images on the room's large screen. 20 stories, late 19th century construction. Amelia's professional interest overcame her nervous energy. The Mason building? That's a remarkable starting point. The original architect was known for innovative use of natural light and ventilation systems that were ahead of their time. Exactly why we chose it. Landon's voice carried a hint of satisfaction. We thought it would appeal to your philosophy of blending historical preservation with modern sustainability. She glanced at him sharply. He'd done his homework, studied her work, her preferences. just as she'd studied his company. For the next hour, they discussed possibilities. Amelia found herself caught up in the potential of the project, sketching quick ideas as they talked. Solar glass integration, living walls, rainwater recycling systems. The Mason building could become a model for historic renovation. "These preliminary concepts are impressive," James said, examining her sketches, "but the timeline is aggressive. We'd need you fully committed to this project." "Full commitment won't be a problem," Landon said before Amelia could respond. "Will it, Ms. Carter?" Their eyes locked. The double meaning in his words was clear to them both. "I'd have to review my current obligations," she said carefully. "This would be a significant undertaking." "Perhaps we could discuss the details over dinner," Landon suggested. "Tonight?" Robert coughed quietly. Diana and James exchanged glances. "I don't mix business with pleasure, Mr. Sinclair." Amelia began gathering her materials. "If you'd like to proceed, I can have a formal proposal ready by next week." "Of course." Landon's expression gave nothing away. "Victoria will provide the technical specifications. We look forward to your proposal." The meeting wrapped up quickly after that. As the others filed out, Landon touched her elbow. "A moment, Ms. Carter." She should have refused. Instead, she nodded, watching as the room emptied. "You're running again," he said softly once they were alone. "I'm being professional." "Is that what the note was? Professional?" Amelia pulled away from his touch. "The note was honest. This is a mistake." "Why?" He stepped closer. "Because of what happened that night? Or because of what's happening right now?" "Nothing is happening right now." "Liar." His voice was gentle. "I feel it. You feel it. This connection, it's rare, special." "It's inappropriate." Amelia clutched her portfolio like a shield. "You're a potential client. Is that the only reason?" "No," she thought. "I'm also keeping secrets that could destroy everything." Out loud, she said, "It's reason enough." Landon studied her face for a long moment. "I'll accept your proposal next week. Not because of any connection between us, but because you're the best person for this job. But Amelia..." He stepped back, giving her space. "I'm not giving up. On either front." She fled to the elevator, her composure cracking. Only when she reached the lobby did she realize she was still wearing the visitor's badge. She turned to go back, then stopped. Let Victoria deal with it. Outside, the morning sun was fully up. Amelia took several deep breaths of the crisp autumn air, trying to slow her racing heart. The meeting had gone both better and worse than she'd feared. The project was perfect, a chance to prove herself on a massive scale. But Landon... Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You forgot your badge." "Dinner would have been more comfortable than lunch in the cafeteria. Tomorrow, but I'll adapt." Despite herself, Amelia smiled. Then she remembered why she couldn't let this happen, and the smile faded. She had 1 week to figure out how to create a brilliant proposal while keeping her distance from Landon Sinclair. 1 week to decide. If she was brave enough to tell him the truth before he discovered it himself. 1 week before everything changed. The Sinclair Tech cafeteria was nothing like Amelia expected. Instead of a sterile corporate space, she found herself in what looked like a trendy bistro, complete with living walls and sustainable bamboo furniture. Her own design sensibilities were reflected everywhere she looked. "Impressed?" Landon's voice came from behind her. "I had it renovated last year." She turned to find him in shirt sleeves, his suit jacket gone, and tie loosened. The casual look suited him too well. "It's thoughtful," she managed. "I care about my employees' well-being." He gestured to a private table in the corner. "Shall we?" Amelia hesitated. She'd spent the morning arguing with herself about whether to come at all. But curiosity had won out. Curiosity about the building, she told herself, not about him. I won't bite, Landon said softly. Just lunch between colleagues. The word colleagues stung more than it should have. Fine, but I have a hard stop. At 1, I'm meeting with the Henderson clients, the bathroom remodel. His slight smile showed he'd done his homework. Again. They settled at the table, a sleek creation of recycled materials. A server, an actual server in a corporate cafeteria, appeared with menus. Everything's locally sourced, Landon explained, part of our sustainability initiative, which conveniently began 2 weeks ago, Amelia couldn't resist saying. His grey eyes met hers. Some catalysts force us to re-evaluate our priorities. Before she could respond, Victoria approached their table, tablet in hand. I'm sorry to interrupt, but the Tokyo team is asking about the quarterly projections. It can wait, Landon said, not looking away from Amelia. Sir, they're insisting, Vic. His tone was gentle but firm. 1 hour. Victoria retreated, but not before giving Amelia a look that seemed equal parts curiosity and concern. You shouldn't ignore your business for this, Amelia said. For what? Lunch? For whatever this is. Landon leaned back, studying her. What do you think this is? A mistake. She picked up her menu, hiding behind it. The grilled salmon looks good. You keep using that word. Mistake. He reached across, slowly lowering her menu shield. I don't believe you mean it. The server returned, saving her from responding. They ordered salmon for her, steak for him, and fell into an uncomfortable silence. Tell me about the Henderson project, Landon said finally. Grateful for the professional topic, Amelia launched into a description of the sustainable materials she'd sourced for the renovation. She found herself relaxing as they discussed design philosophy, surprised by his genuine interest and insightful questions. You really do care about this, she said as their meals arrived. It's not just a corporate strategy. I care about a lot of things. His gaze intensified, including why you ran that morning. Amelia's fork clattered against her plate. Mr. Sinclair, Landon, please. This isn't appropriate. What isn't? Asking why someone left a cryptic note and disappeared. He leaned forward. I've been nothing but transparent, Amelia. I want you for this project because you're brilliant at what you do. But I also want... Don't! She stood abruptly. I can't. We can't. Why not? He rose too, his height, making her heart race. Give me one honest reason. The real reason burned in her throat, demanding to be spoken. Instead, she said, because I won't be another conquest for a bored billionaire. His expression hardened. Is that what you think this is? Isn't it? The grand gestures, the sustainability pivot, the private lunches. I've dealt with men like you before. Men like me, he repeated softly. You don't know me at all. And you don't know me. If you did, you wouldn't be looking at me like that. Because you won't let me. He stepped closer, his presence overwhelming. What are you afraid of, Amelia? Everything in her screamed to run. Instead, she found herself saying, I'm not afraid. I'm practical. This project could make or break my career. I won't risk it for feelings. Feelings. A smile touched his lips. So you admit there are feelings. I admit nothing. But her voice shook. Have dinner with me. No. Not as a client. Not as a billionaire. Just as a man who hasn't been able to stop thinking about you since you fell asleep in his bed. Heat flooded her face. That's not fair. None of this is fair. He touched her cheek softly. You've haunted me for 2 weeks. Let me take you to dinner, one meal. If you can look me in the eye afterward and say there's nothing here worth exploring, I'll never mention it again. She should say no. She had a dozen reasons to say no. Instead, she heard herself whisper, one dinner, one dinner. His thumb brushed her cheekbone. Tomorrow night. I'll pick you up at 7. I'll meet you there. At his questioning look, she added, "Baby steps, Mr. Sinclair." "Landon," he corrected. "Landon." The name felt intimate on her tongue. Someone cleared their throat nearby. They jumped apart to find Victoria pretending not to notice their proximity. "Tokyo is calling again, sir?" Landon's jaw tightened. "Text me the restaurant details," he asked Amelia. She nodded, not trusting her voice. He squeezed her hand once, then followed Victoria out. Alone at the table, Amelia sank back into her chair. What had she just agreed to? One dinner could change everything. One dinner could destroy everything. Her phone buzzed. A text from Charlotte. "How's the proposal coming?" Amelia stared at her half-eaten lunch, remembering the feel of Landon's thumb on her cheek. How could she focus on a proposal when she'd just agreed to the one thing she'd promised herself she wouldn't do? More importantly, how could she go to dinner with him tomorrow, knowing what she knew? The truth she'd been hiding would come out. Eventually. Secrets like hers always did, but maybe, just maybe, one dinner was worth the risk. One chance to feel that electricity again, to explore what might have been if circumstances were different. One dinner before it all fell apart. Amelia stood before the mirror in her Providence apartment, second-guessing her choice of a deep burgundy dress. The fabric draped elegantly, professional enough for a business dinner, but striking enough for something more. Her phone buzzed for the third time, Charlotte again, demanding details about tonight's meeting. She hadn't told her sister the truth about the dinner. Some things were better kept private, especially when they were doomed from the start. The restaurant Landon had chosen was in Newport, an hour from Providence, but worlds away from Boston's corporate sphere. A deliberate choice, she realized. Neutral ground. Her phone buzzed again. This time the message made her breath catch. "Looking forward to seeing you. No running away tonight. L." She touched the screen, remembering his fingers on her cheek. Yesterday, this was madness. She should cancel, call in sick, blame a client emergency. Instead, she grabbed her keys. The Chandler House restaurant occupied a restored Victorian mansion overlooking the Atlantic. Amelia arrived early, but Landon was already waiting in the intimate bar area. He wore a charcoal suit that made his grey eyes smoke, no tie, his collar open at the throat. "You look stunning," he said simply. "You look," she swallowed, "different. From the office. Good different. Dangerous different." His slow smile made her pulse race. "Shall we?" He guided her toward their table with a light touch at the small of her back. The host led them to a private alcove with ocean views. Candlelight flickered across polished wood and crystal, creating an intimacy that both thrilled and terrified her. "The building's original woodwork," Landon noted as they sat, "all preserved during restoration." Of course, he'd chosen a historically significant venue. "The craftsmanship is extraordinary. I thought you'd appreciate it." He studied her over his wine glass. "Though I'm more interested in you than the architecture tonight." "Landon, tell me something real, Amelia, something not in your professional portfolio or social media." She traced the stem of her water glass. "Like what?" "Like why you really left Walsh Interiors." Her hand stilled. "That's not exactly dinner conversation." "Isn't it? Regina Walsh's top designer suddenly quits, starts her own firm." He leaned forward. "What happened?" "How do you know I was her top designer?" "I know everything about your professional life. It's your personal life that's a mystery. Maybe it should stay that way." But even as she said it, something in her wanted to tell him everything. The truth about Regina, about why she'd really been at that conference, about the secret that kept her running. Their server arrived with menus, breaking the moment. They ordered sea bass for her, duck for him, and fell into safer conversation about Newport's historical architecture. "You're deflecting," Landon said after their appetizers arrived. "I'm being pleasant dinner company." "You're hiding." His voice softened. "What are you so afraid of, Amelia?" The genuine concern in his tone nearly broke her. "I'm not—" She stopped as her phone buzzed. The name on the screen made her blood run cold. Regina Walsh. "Problem?" Landon asked. "No." Amelia tucked the phone away, but her hands shook slightly. "Just work." His eyes narrowed. "Regina, how did you— your expression— want to tell me what she did to you? You mean besides trying to destroy my career?" The words slipped out. Before she could stop them, Landon went very still. "Explain." Maybe it was the wine. Maybe it was the candlelight, or his intense focus, or simply the weight of carrying secrets for too long. Whatever the reason, Amelia found herself talking. "Regina doesn't just run a design firm. She steals ideas, contracts, clients, anything she can take credit for. I caught her copying designs from her junior staff, claiming them as her own. When I confronted her—" "She turned on you." Amelia nodded. "Suddenly my clients were being told I was unreliable. Vendors wouldn't work with me. She even tried to plant evidence that I was the one stealing designs. That's why you started your own firm." "I had to, but she's still doing it. That conference where we met, I was there to warn one of her newer designers who's about to go through the same thing." Landon's expression darkened. "Why haven't you exposed her? With what proof? She's—" "Careful, connected. I tried filing complaints, but nothing stuck." He pulled out his phone. "Give me an hour." "What are you doing?" "Calling in some favors. Regina Walsh isn't the only one with connections." "No." Amelia grabbed his hand. "This is exactly why I didn't want to tell you. I don't need a white knight, Landon. I need—" "What?" His fingers intertwined with hers. "What do you need, Amelia?" "You," she thought. But that was impossible now, because this, her weakness, her vulnerability, wasn't even the biggest secret she was keeping from him. She pulled her hand away. "I need to go." "Don't!" His voice was soft but urgent. "Don't run again. You don't understand." "Then help me understand." He reached for her again, but she stood. "I can't. I'm sorry, but I can't do this. Any of this. The dinner, the project. It's too complicated." "Amelia, thank you for dinner." She grabbed her purse. "Please don't contact me again." She fled into the cool Newport night, tears blurring her vision. Behind her she heard Landon call her name, but she didn't stop. Couldn't stop. Because the truth about Regina wasn't the real reason she was running. The real truth was so much worse. And when Landon discovered it, which he would, now that she'd let him get this close, he would never look at her the same way again. Her phone buzzed once more. Regina's message glowed in the darkness. "Hope you're enjoying dinner with Landon. Sinclair, we should talk about old times. Soon." Amelia's hands shook as she deleted the message. It was all falling apart, exactly as she'd feared it would. The only question was, how much damage would she cause before it was over? Regina Walsh's office occupied the top floor of a restored brownstone in Boston's Back Bay, floor to ceiling. Windows offered a commanding view of the city, a visual reminder of her influence in the design world. She stood at these windows now, phone pressed to her ear. "Are you sure about this?" She listened intently. "No mistakes. I need concrete proof of the connection. Yes, I understand the cost. Just get it done." The door opened, and her assistant entered with a thick folder. "The Sinclair tech files you requested," Regina smiled, settling behind her massive desk. "Let's see what our dear Amelia has been hiding, shall we?" Landon hadn't slept. He sat in his home office, surrounded by digital displays showing everything his team had uncovered about Regina Walsh in the past 12 hours. Financial records, client complaints, litigation that never made it to court, a pattern of systematic theft and intimidation. "Sir?" Victoria's voice came through the intercom. "Your brother's here." Robert strode in before Landon could respond. Have you completely lost your mind? Good morning to you too. Don't. Robert tossed a newspaper onto the desk. Explain this. Landon glanced at the headline. Sinclair Tech withdraws from major contracts with Walsh Interiors. Seems self-explanatory. You cancelled 3 major projects without board approval, projects worth millions. I don't work with thieves. Landon's voice was ice. Regina Walsh has been stealing designs from her employees for years. And you know this how? When Landon didn't respond, Robert sighed. This is about her, isn't it? The designer who ran away. This is about doing what's right. No, this is about your obsession with Amelia Carter. Robert leaned forward. What aren't you telling me? Before Landon could answer, his phone buzzed. The message made his blood run cold. Enjoyed digging into my past? 2 can play that game. Ask your precious Amelia about Project Aurora. Amelia's tiny office felt like a prison. She'd been staring at her laptop for hours, trying to focus on the Sinclair Tech proposal, but her mind kept drifting to last night, to Landon's touch, his concern, the way he'd immediately wanted to help with Regina. Her phone chimed with another message from Charlotte. You're not still working, are you? It's Sunday. She ignored it, just like she'd ignored the dozen other texts since last night. How could she explain to her sister that everything was unraveling? That Regina knew about her dinner with Landon? That her carefully constructed walls were crumbling? A knock at her door made her jump. We're closed on Sun. The words died in her throat as she looked up. Landon filled the doorway, his expression unreadable. Project Aurora. Amelia's world stopped. How do you... Regina sent me a message. He stepped inside, closing the door. Want to tell me what it means? I can't. Her voice shook. Please, just let this go. No. He moved closer, his presence overwhelming in the small space. No more running, Amelia. No more secrets. You don't understand what you're asking. Then help me understand. His voice softened. Whatever it is, we can handle it. We? She laughed bitterly. There is no we, Landon, there can't be. Because of Regina. I've already started dismantling her empire. By tomorrow, every major client will know what she's been doing. Horror filled Amelia's chest. What did you do? What you should have done months ago. I cancelled all Sinclair Tech contracts with her firm. Anonymous tips have been sent to her other clients. She's finished. No. Amelia grabbed her phone. 3 missed calls from Regina. You don't know what you've done. I protected you. I didn't ask for your protection. She ran her hands through her hair. God, this is exactly what I was afraid of. You and your grand gestures, thinking money and power can solve everything. Then tell me what will solve it. He caught her hands. Tell me about Aurora. She pulled away. Get out. Amelia. I mean it. Leave now. Something in her voice must have reached him because he stepped back. This isn't over. Yes, it is. She turned away, fighting tears. The project, whatever this is, it's done. She didn't look up until she heard the door close. Only then did she let the tears fall, pulling out her phone with trembling fingers. Regina answered on the first ring. I wondered when you'd call. Leave him out of this. Oh, darling. Regina's voice dripped poison. He involved himself the moment he started attacking my company, but we can make this all go away. Come see me tomorrow. We'll discuss old times and Project Aurora. The line went dead. Amelia sank into her chair, defeat washing over her. She'd tried so hard to protect everyone. Charlotte, the other designers at Walsh Interiors, even Landon, but now he'd painted a target on himself, thinking he was helping. Her phone buzzed again. A text from Victoria Chen. Whatever's happening, he deserves to know the truth before Regina tells him her version. Amelia stared at the message for a long time. Victoria was right. But the truth could destroy everything. Not just her feelings for Landon, but his entire company, because Project Aurora wasn't just a secret. It was a ticking time bomb. The morning dawned cold and grey over Boston. Amelia sat in her car outside Regina's office, watching early workers hurry past with coffee cups clutched in gloved hands. Her own hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white. On the passenger seat lay a worn leather portfolio. Evidence she'd never wanted to use. Her phone lit up with Landon's name for the 10th time since yesterday. She ignored it, just like all the others. Some conversations couldn't happen over the phone. The click of her heels echoed in the empty lobby as she made her way to the elevator. Too early for Regina's regular staff, but she knew her former boss would be waiting. Regina thrived on power plays, like making people come to her at dawn. The elevator doors opened to reveal Victoria Chen. "What are you doing here?" Amelia stepped back. "Making sure you don't face her alone." Victoria held the door. "He sent me." Of course he did. But Amelia felt a flicker of gratitude as she stepped into the elevator. Does he know about Aurora? No, but he was up all night going through old Walsh Interiors files. He's going to figure it out. The elevator climbed in silence. When it reached Regina's floor, Victoria touched Amelia's arm. "Whatever happened, he's not his father." Amelia's heart clenched. "That's what I'm afraid of." Regina stood at her usual spot by the windows, silhouetted against the grey sky. "I didn't expect you to bring a friend." "Ms. Chen is here as a witness." Amelia's voice was steadier than she felt. "Since we're discussing corporate espionage." Regina turned, smile sharp as a blade. "Is that what we're discussing? I thought we were talking about your relationship with Landon Sinclair." "My relationship with Mr. Sinclair is complicated. Given that you helped me steal his father's proprietary technology 3 years ago." Victoria went very still beside her. Amelia forced herself to breathe. "That's not what happened." "No?" Regina moved to her desk, opening a folder. "Project Aurora, a revolutionary, sustainable building management system. Developed by Richard Sinclair before his death, it would have transformed Sinclair Tech from a basic software company into a green technology leader." She looked up. "Sound familiar?" "You're leaving out some details." "Am I? Like how you accessed the files while designing Richard's home office? How you passed them to me and I sold them to his competitors?" Regina's smile widened. "Or how those competitors buried the technology to protect their own interests?" "I didn't know." Amelia's voice cracked. "I didn't know what you were really after, and yet you still took the files. To protect them. Richard was dying. He told me his board would bury Aurora because it would hurt their existing contracts. He asked me to keep the files safe until Landon was ready to—" She stopped, realizing too late what she'd revealed. Regina's laugh was cruel. "Oh, this is rich. You actually thought you were helping, keeping Daddy's legacy safe for little Landon." "Richard knew the board was corrupt. He trusted me to—" "He was a dying old man, paranoid and delusional. And you, my dear, committed corporate theft. The fact that you were too naive to know what I'd do with the files doesn't change that." Victoria stepped forward. "Where are the original files now? Sold, scattered, lost to time." Regina waved a dismissive hand. "But the proof of Amelia's theft? I've kept that very safe." "What do you want?" Amelia's voice was hollow. "Want? I want my contracts with Sinclair Tech reinstated. I want a public apology from Landon for his baseless accusations, and I want you to disappear." Regina's smile turned poisonous. "Leave Boston. Abandon your little firm. Or I'll tell Landon exactly how you betrayed his father's legacy." The portfolio felt heavy in Amelia's hands. "No. No? You don't get to threaten me anymore." She placed the portfolio on Regina's desk. Richard didn't just trust me with files. He gave me proof of everything, the board's corruption, your involvement, all of it. Regina's smile faltered as she opened the portfolio. These are board meeting minutes, emails, recordings. Amelia's voice strengthened. Richard knew exactly what was happening. He left a trail protected by attorney-client privilege until his death, a trail that proves the board conspired with you to steal and bury Aurora. You're bluffing. Am I? Check your email. The same evidence was just sent to the SEC, the FBI, and every major tech journal in the country. Amelia glanced at Victoria, who nodded confirmation. It's over, Regina. The older woman's face contorted. You stupid girl, you have no idea what you've done. When this gets out, it won't just destroy me. The scandal will devastate Sinclair Tech. The stock will plummet. Everything Landon's built will survive. A deep voice came from the doorway. Amelia's heart stopped. Landon stood there, Robert beside him, both their faces grim. How long? Amelia couldn't finish. Long enough. Landon's eyes never left her face. Victoria kept me updated. I needed to hear it for myself. Regina recovered quickly. Landon, dear, your father was trying to protect his life's work. Landon's voice was ice. And the only person who tried to help him was the woman you're attempting to destroy. He finally looked at Regina. The Seki is waiting downstairs. I suggest you go quietly. You're making a mistake. But Regina's voice shook as she gathered her things. The scandal will hurt less than the truth coming out another way. Robert stepped forward. The car is waiting, Ms. Walsh. They watched in silence as Robert escorted Regina out. Only when the elevator doors closed did Amelia dare to look at Landon. I'm so sorry. I wanted to tell you, but I thought if you knew I'd been involved in losing Aurora. You didn't lose it. He moved closer. You protected it, protected him. But the files are still gone. The technology isn't gone. Victoria pulled out a thumb drive. Richard Sinclair left a copy of everything with his lawyers to be delivered. To Landon 3 years after his death. It arrived last week. What? Amelia looked between them. But then why did you let me? Because I needed to know. Landon took her hands. Not about Aurora. About you. Whether you'd risk everything to do what's right. His voice softened. And you did. The company will weather the storm. Robert's already preparing a statement about uncovering past board corruption and recommitting to our father's vision of sustainable technology. He squeezed her hands. But right now I don't care about any of that. What do you care about? His smile was gentle. Having dinner. With you again. Properly this time. No running away. Despite everything, Amelia felt an answering smile tug at her lips. I think I'm done running. Victoria cleared her throat. I'll handle things downstairs. Take your time. When they were alone, Landon cupped Amelia's face in his hands. Thank you for protecting him, for fighting for the truth, for being exactly who I thought you were. And who is that? The woman I'm falling in love with. This time, when he kissed her, Amelia didn't run. She stayed, letting the warmth of his touch chase away the cold of secrets too long kept. Outside, the grey dawn was finally breaking into sunshine. The headlines dominated every major tech and business publication. Walsh Interior's founder arrested in corporate espionage. Scandal Sinclair Tech uncovers years of board corruption. Richard. Sinclair's final project? The truth behind Aurora. Amelia stared at the news feeds, scrolling across her office computer, still processing the whirlwind of the past week. Regina's arrest had triggered a cascade of revelations. Former Walsh employees were coming forward with their own stories of theft and intimidation. Sinclair Tech stock had initially plunged, then rallied as investors responded to Landon's transparent handling of the crisis. Her phone buzzed with a text from Charlotte. "Turn on Channel 5. Your boyfriend's on TV. He's not my—" Amelia started to type, then stopped. What exactly was Landon to her now? They'd barely had a moment alone since that kiss in Regina's office, both caught up in the storm of investigations and interviews. She turned on the small TV mounted in her office corner. Landon stood at a podium outside Sinclair Tech's headquarters, looking impossibly composed in a navy suit. "My father's vision was always about more than profit," he was saying. "Project. Aurora represents a commitment to sustainable technology that was ahead of its time. Today, we're not just reclaiming that vision, we're expanding it." The camera panned to show architectural renderings behind him. Amelia's breath caught. They were her designs for the Mason Building renovation, but evolved, incorporating Aurora's systems in ways she'd only dreamed possible. "The new Sinclair Tech headquarters will be a model of historical preservation and cutting-edge sustainability," Landon continued. "A bridge between past and future, just as my father intended." A reporter called out, "What about the rumors of your relationship with the whistleblower?" Landon's expression remained professional, but Amelia saw the slight softening around his eyes. Ms. Carter's integrity in bringing these issues to light speaks for itself. Her architectural vision for our new headquarters will help define Sinclair Tech's future. Any personal matters are exactly that, personal. The office door opened and Victoria slipped in. "Good answer," she said, nodding at the TV. "Very diplomatic." Amelia switched it off. "I assume you're here about the project timeline?" "Actually, I'm here about dinner. Landon wanted me to give you this." She handed over an envelope. Inside, Amelia found a handwritten note. "Remember our first night? Meet me in Suite 1642. 8 p.m. No running this time." "He's been in meetings all week," Victoria said, "but he cleared his entire evening. And before you worry, the press has no access to the hotel." Amelia traced his handwriting with her finger. "It feels strange, doesn't it? Everything changing so fast. Good strange or bad strange? I'm not sure yet." She looked up at Victoria. "How's he really doing with all of this?" Victoria settled into the client chair. "Honestly, better than anyone expected. Finding Aurora, exposing the corruption, meeting you. It's like he's finally stepping out of his father's shadow. Becoming his own man. And the company? Stocks almost recovered. Robert's handling the board, restructuring. The Aurora patents alone are worth billions." She studied Amelia carefully. "But that's not what you're really asking, is it?" Amelia sighed. "Is it crazy to be afraid? Not of the scandal or the press, but of this, us? What's crazy is fighting something this real." Victoria stood. "Take it from someone who's watched him build walls for years. You're the first person who's made him want to tear them down." After Victoria left, Amelia sat in her tiny office, watching the sun set over Providence. Her phone buzzed with another text from Charlotte. "Seriously, sis, you're dating a billionaire who just exposed corporate corruption to protect your reputation. Call me." But it wasn't about reputation or billions or even Aurora. It was about the way Landon looked at her, like she was something precious and strong at the same time. The way he'd trusted her truth before he'd even heard it. The way he made her want to stop running. At 7:30, she got in her car. Suite 1642 looked exactly as she remembered, but felt completely different. Maybe because this time she was supposed to be here. Landon opened the door before she could. Knock. He'd shed his suit jacket and tie, looking more like the man who'd found her sleeping in his bed than the CEO from the press conference. "You came." His voice was soft with wonder. "Did you think I wouldn't?" "I hoped." He drew her inside. "But you have a history of disappearing on me." "Not anymore." She stepped closer. breathing in his familiar scent. "I'm done hiding." His hands came up to frame her face. "Good, because I have plans for us. The headquarters project. That too." His thumb traced her cheekbone. "But first, dinner. Real dinner, no running away, no secrets between us." "Just us? Just us." He led her to the suite's private dining room, where an intimate table was set with candles and flowers, a bottle of champagne chilled nearby. "Celebrating something?" she asked. "Everything." He pulled out her chair. "Aurora, justice, finding you, take your pick." As they settled into dinner, Amelia felt the last of her walls crumbling. They talked about everything and nothing, his childhood dreams of changing the world through technology, her passion for preserving architectural history. He told her about losing his father, about the pressure of living up to the Sinclair name. She shared stories about growing up with Charlotte, about finding her voice through design. "I have something for you," he said as they finished dessert. He retrieved a small box from his jacket. "Landon, it's not what you think." He placed it in her hands. "Open it." Inside, she found an old key card. "The one from that first night," he explained. "I kept it. Even when I thought I'd never see you again, I couldn't throw it away." "Why?" "Because some mistakes aren't mistakes at all." He took her hands. "They're fate." When he kissed her this time, there was no hesitation, no fear, no secrets between them. Just the certainty that whatever came next, headlines, projects, challenges, they would face it together. Outside the windows of Suite 1642, Boston's lights twinkled like stars, witnesses to a love story that began with a simple mix-up and ended with the truth setting them both free. 1 year later, the Mason building gleamed in the late afternoon sun, its restored 19th century facade a testament to preservation and progress. Behind the historic stone walls, Richard Sinclair's Aurora system regulated everything from energy consumption to air quality, making it one of the most sustainable buildings in Boston. Amelia stood in what would soon be her new office, running her hand along the original woodwork she'd insisted on saving. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of the city she'd come to love, while preserved architectural details reminded her of how far she'd come. Taking a break from the conference preparations, Landon's voice came from the doorway. She turned to find him leaning against the frame, sleeves rolled up, tie loose. Even after a year, the sight of him still made her heart skip. "Just admiring our work." She gestured to the space around them. "It's hard to believe the opening's tomorrow." Having second thoughts about the keynote speech, about speaking at the International Sustainable Architecture Conference, in the building that changed everything, she smiled. "Never." He crossed to join her at the windows. "Everything looks ready downstairs. Victoria's terrorizing the event staff into perfection. And the surprise? Secured." His arms slipped around her waist. "Though I still think you're crazy for wanting to do this here. It's perfect here." She leaned back against him. "Where else would we announce the merger?" Tomorrow, they would reveal that Carter Design was becoming part of Sinclair Tech's new sustainable architecture division, not as an acquisition, but as a true partnership, her vision and his resources combining to transform the industry. "Speaking of perfect," Landon turned her to face him. "There's something else we should discuss. The board meeting, because I already told Robert." "Not the board." He reached into his pocket. "This." The small velvet box made her breath catch. "Landon, let me do this right." He sank to one knee, still holding her hand. "1 year ago, you accidentally walked into my life and changed everything. You showed me what real integrity looks like. You helped me reclaim my father's legacy while building my own. You made me believe in fate." Tears blurred Amelia's vision as he opened the box, revealing a vintage emerald ring. "It was my grandmother's," he said softly, "a piece of history redesigned for the future. Just like us. His grey eyes held hers. "Marry me, Amelia. Be my partner in everything." She pulled him to his feet, wrapping her arms around his neck. "Yes, of course, yes." The kiss tasted of joy and promise and forever. When they finally parted, Landon slipped the ring onto her finger. The emerald caught the late afternoon light, sending green sparkles across the woodwork. "Perfect timing," came Charlotte's voice. They turned to find her and Robert in the doorway, champagne bottles in hand. "You knew?" Amelia asked her sister. "Please," Charlotte rolled her eyes. "Who do you think helped him pick the moment? Though I still say sweet 1642 would have been more romantic. This is more us." Amelia squeezed Landon's hand. "Building something new while honoring the past." As their siblings popped the champagne, Amelia looked around the space that represented so much. Here was her design aesthetic merged with Landon's technology. Here was the proof that doing the right thing, no matter how hard, led to something better than hiding. "Penny for your thoughts?" Landon handed her a glass. "Just thinking about mistakes that aren't really mistakes." His smile was soft, like getting the wrong room key. Like trusting your heart even when your head says run. They moved to the windows, watching the sun set over their city. Tomorrow would bring speeches and announcements, mergers and celebrations. But tonight was just for them, standing in the building that had helped them build a future. "I love you," Landon said quietly. "No running away this time?" Amelia touched the ring on her finger, feeling the weight of history and possibility. "No running. Not ever again." Around them, the Mason building hummed with Aurora's systems, a symphony of past and future working in perfect harmony, just like them. The next morning, as Amelia prepared to address the conference, she found a note tucked into her speech folder. Inside was an old key card from Suite 1642 and Landon's handwriting. "Some wrong turns lead exactly where you're meant to be. Thank you for getting lost and finding me. L." She tucked the note close to her heart and stepped onto the stage, ready to share their vision of a future where preservation and progress danced together, where mistakes became destiny, and where love was the greatest sustainable resource of all. Behind her, the restored facade of the Mason building caught the morning light, its windows reflecting the promise of tomorrow. And somewhere in the audience, Landon watched with pride as the woman who had accidentally stumbled into his suite prepared to deliberately step into their future. Some stories end where they began, but the best ones, like theirs, keep building towards something even more beautiful, together. The end. That was a beautiful story, wasn't it? I hope you enjoyed it. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Your collaboration is very important to me.